When we consider American slavery, we tend to limit our thoughts to images of cotton fields, whipping posts, and auction blocks. However, lurking in even darker corners is a more terrifying fact. A truth that even the majority of textbooks dare not admit. This was slave breeding. It was a cruel and cold-blooded institution that viewed human reproduction as a business model. America discovered another way to make money out of slavery after the prohibition of the slave trade across the Atlantic in 1808. It is to keep the slaves as a source of personal wealth that can be replenished. Since the trade of African slaves was disarmed, the plantation owners, particularly those in Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina, started compelling the enslaved women to give birth to children. It was not merely a byproduct of slavery, but it was its motive power itself. Breeding as big business. The economic rationale of slave breeding was quite evident by the early 19th century. The Upper South was overstocked in enslaved people, particularly when tobacco declined in profitability. In the meantime, the Deep South was growing its cotton and sugar industries, and it was in dire need of additional labor. The solution to that was terrifyingly straightforward, i.e., more slave breeding. Virginia served as a hub of this domestic trade, and slaves were walked hundreds of miles to markets in cities such as New Orleans. Plantation records indicate an unbelievable degree of organization. An example is Thomas Jefferson, who not only sired children with an enslaved woman, Sally Hemings, but also maintained precise records of births at Monticello. Female children were not viewed as persons, but as sources of procreation. The traders made money by purchasing the so-called breeding women, who were considered the most fertile and likely to give birth to several children, and selling them at a high price. Plantation ledgers used demeaning terms such as increase or stock to refer to the newborn. One Virginia slaveholder was relatively straightforward when he wrote, "The chief gain of a plantation is the multiplication of the Negroes, forced pairings, and sexual exploitation." The breeding system did not occur passively. The fact that children were born in plantations was not the only aspect. The enslavers participated actively in arranging forced marriages. Healthy men were selected who were strong enough to impregnate as many women as they could. They were even rented out to other plantations sometimes. The breeding of animals was done horrifically, often referred to as the term stud. Former slave man Henry Box Brown reported on the beatings of men to make them have sex with women. It was a proxy rape. It was a rape of both parties, where both parties had been deprived of choices, consent, and dignity. In some other instances, the white enslavers even raped enslaved women and sold their children to gain profit. One of the most influential voices in America against slavery, Frederick Douglass, was born due to such a violation. This was all possible through the law. As the mother passed on the status to children, each child born by an enslaved woman resulted in additional slaves. The more slaves, the more wealth was obtained. The trauma of family separation. The inhumanity did not stop at the time of birth. The young children born in these forced pregnancies were usually sold away at tender ages, and their mothers had no say in this. Babies were plucked out of their mother's arms and sold as cattle. Martha King, a former slave woman, recollected how she had seen her sister sell her baby at the price of $1,000 out of her arms. Separation within families was not the side effect of slavery. Instead, it was a weapon of psychological warfare. The enslavers were aware that family ties helped prevent rebellion. A mother who is in desperate need to save her children is less likely to run away. A male who was informed that he could be torn off his partner could be more submissive. This emotional terror was parallel to physical abuse. Slavery was transmitted across generations, although formal slavery ceased to exist. Why America doesn't talk about it? Among the reasons why this history is kept in the closet lies the myth of the benevolent master. Southern apologists created an account of the lost cause after the Civil War, an account that portrayed slavery as an institution of civilization where the slaves were treated kindly. The reality of the atrocities of forced breeding would kill that myth. To this day, many school curricula still evade these realities. Slave breeding is not very often taught. It is often overlooked in museums, and popular memory hangs onto scrubbed-up versions of the past and the unpleasant, nasty truths. However, the consequences do not cease to be. They can be seen in the racial wealth disparity, in the disintegration of Black family histories, and in the multi-generational trauma that recurs in most descendants. Final thoughts. Slavery did not imply only work, but possession of the body itself. Rape to giving birth, all aspects of an enslaved person were on sale. The breeding farms of the Upper South were not marginal institutions, but core to the American economy. This was not a sideline story. It was the economic system of a country that preached freedom and practiced inhumanity. And until this truth is commonly accepted, America will never come to terms with its history. We have to face all of it to know the legacy of slavery well enough, including bedrooms, birthing rooms, and auction blocks, not just chains and cotton, since it is often the most painful truths that can explain the present the best.